from your experience, if you could change one or two things about the immigration process, what would you change?
I can easily answer that. The paperwork. The paperwork, the paperwork. If the process could be simpler and faster. As I told you, I've been in the process for 12 years. My sister actually filed for permanent residency for me, and it took 12 years, 12, to actually obtain your permanent resident card. And part of that process, a lot of it is just waiting with there's no voice, there's no nothing. So if there is a way for the process to be sped up in a way to be able to get through and find out if you're actually approved or not, you know, it makes the life can continue a lot easier.
This is just kind of the first thing that came to mind. So there are several different kinds of student visas, but the vast majority of people would come on what's called an F1 student visa. And I really wish that there were more benefits to family members. So for example, a spouse coming as an F2, the F1 being the student, an F2 spouse has very limited options available to them while they're here. They can't work and they can't take classes due to visa restrictions. And so I really wish that there could just be a bit more opportunity for someone who's coming as the dependent of a person on a student visa.
I'm just going to talk a little about the people that are already here that are undocumented. First of all, there is not a change for them to get any legal, even if they have years and years living here. And in particular, I know some cases that they didn't go to the last opportunity that was open for them, and I guess back in the 80s, because they were afraid and they didn't know. Like some of them they don't even have TVs and stuff like that, so they didn't know how to go and get opportunities to be illegal in this country. So I wish that an immigration procedure could verify in more individual cases, and instead of doing a general thing like. And also talking about the kids that they were brought here when they were kids, like it's amazing how much things they need to prove in order to get a permission to work or to keep studying here in the States. So yeah, I wish that could be more gentle process and more options available for people.
Thanks to all the panelists. Alan, in particular, you mentioned some of your experiences in Texas and perhaps other places where you didn't experience a hospitable atmosphere. I'm wondering from you in particular, and others as well, what changes you might expect to see if the Christians that you encountered interacted on the basis of first identity being as brothers and sisters in Christ, and only secondly on the basis of differentiation between country of origin.
Well, I think that it's necessary to talk about those things, because we don't. I think like specifically here in the United States, there's a lot of love for the United States. If you see the books of the history, usually it's from the point of view of this country and not from other countries. So we have, well, I think, this is my opinion, already some way of thinking, and we brought this onto to our way to live a Christian life, and we sometimes are afraid to talk about it because we don't want to get hurt and acknowledge that in our past we did something wrong. The whole thing in Texas, I don't like to go to San Antonio, for instance, because I see the list of people that they claim the independence of Texas is, and only few of them were Hispanic. And I was like, wow, Texas was part of Mexico, and everybody that claimed the independence were people moving from New York and other states down there. So when you started digging in history, you started finding out things like, you might get surprised and you don't want to talk about that. So, and then probably that will, you will appreciate more your citizenship in heaven, because you know that there's nothing more valuable, nothing more clean than that. And that is what really matters. But we don't talk about that. We don't appreciate that. People, I believe that people appreciate more the green card or your citizenship more than being a citizen from the heaven.
Alan, you were talking about the difference between working with immigrants or immigrants working with churches or immigrants working for churches. Could you maybe just spell out a little bit more of what that means tangibly, how churches can work with as partners rather than immigrants working for?
Sure. We have been talking a lot about here in Mosaic about listening, and but sometimes we listen, but we want to do what we want. Or we just process it through our culture, our things that we learn in Trinity, perhaps. Like, I need to tell you guys, a lot of the things that I'm learning here, I need to find a way to apply it in my culture, because it's things that doesn't matter. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if people from other cultures, because this is very Anglo-oriented. So when you go to the staff in churches, and you see everybody Anglo, and then you end up working for them, doing what they think that is the right thing according with their knowledge. And sometimes they don't see the cultural aspects implicit in that. So I think it is, that's why I was thinking, it's not about working for, it's working with, in partnership. And that, honestly, in my opinion, started here. If you don't have friendship with people from other cultures here, in particular Hispanics, because there's a lot of Hispanic people. I mean, I'm surprised, man, if you look around how many Hispanic you see here in the campus, or the majority there are doing, cleaning the restrooms and things like that. And some of you guys, I don't see them saying hello or hola or things like that. And I feel sad, what's going on? We appreciate more education and our way of thinking sharply more than welcoming somebody. And that is reflected in the way that the staff is viewed in a church. So I think that is learning how to empower others in the church to do their ministry among their culture.
And if I could just second what the brother said, I've been talking to just some churches in the city looking to look like the city. They've been major significant churches in the city for a while, and you go to their staff page and you look at the staff page and everybody is a majority culture, and they're like, we have a heart for the city, we want to reach the city, and nobody on staff is anything different than what they are. And then at the same time, when it comes to looking at other cultures or looking at hiring people outside of the majority culture, they're like, well, they don't exist, or we can't find them. One of the elements to fixing that problem is obviously finding those people and giving them the education that Dr. Waybright talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but changing the qualifications for what you're looking for. So sometimes when you're staffing a church, if your qualifications are they have a Master of Divinity, you're going to limit who you're actually going to find. And so even as an evangelical seminary, I think that's, man, as the leaders of the next generation of these churches, man, if our seminaries look like majority culture, then the churches, even when they say that they have a heart for the city, are still going to look like majority churches. So, and to say also that you have to recognize, like when people think of hiring a black person, they think that all black people are the same, that our culture is monolithic, and so but within every culture there's diversity of different. There's the Carlton Banks, there's the Denzel Washington, and there's the Ice Cube, and those are all within one ethnicity. So just being aware.
I think part of what happens when you're an immigrant is that you're always aware that you're not American, and I'll never be American. People make an assumption that you are Jamaican American, and level B. So I think there are opportunities which I've experienced for listening and asking questions, which is what we have said before. Trinity, in terms of growth, my desire is for our institution to reflect more clearly in leadership and structures, people from a diverse place. Because the future of the church, as Steve rightly says, is not going to be homogeneous anymore. And so to reflect that in both teaching as well as through the structures of the institution, that's my hope. For me personally, I know in my program, in the EDS program, I have felt very welcome and actually have been encouraged that my opinion counts, it matters, it comes to the table, it's validated at the table. I have not experienced that previously in my education. So this is a new world for me to be able to bring my opinion, my culture, my experience, my context to the table, have that be heard, validated, and affirmed, and then try to work through now how can that then permeate other areas of my experience here at Trinity. So it has been a mixed experience. On most levels, it has been positive. In other ways, I've got questionable things that I've wondered. But for the most part, Beatrice, I've had a positive experience. People are always in process, and so I try and understand that a lot of it is just what I frame as ignorance. People just don't know. And so rather than asking, they make assumptions. So it's just a learning process in that way. But I hope that Trinity will grow in this area significantly, not just talk about diversity and have Black people on a brochure or people from another country on a brochure, but really reflect diversity throughout the institution systematically and systemically.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of very positive things happening. For example, a few summers ago, there was a conference on multinational classrooms and just thinking through just the dynamics of that. And I would say, there are times where there's just a lot to be celebrated in this way. But I would say there also are moments of pain in seeing things not being quite what they should be. And so I hope that we can continue to grow, as well as celebrate all that is happening.
That you guys can, I know that you sometimes are uncomfortable in talking about these topics, but you need to take it out. I'm very intentional. You're from Arizona, tell me what is your opinion about immigration? And we often discuss about it, but then we end in having a good conversation, and some of the students started thinking like, man, I didn't even think in individual cases. I was just thinking in general, and that was amazing just to see that, like how people are changing their way of thinking. So I'm glad to be here and to learn from you guys, because I guess if I want to be speaking from Hispanic culture, I need to modeling what I'm expecting from you guys to do the same thing,